Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Priscilla Mundilo, and I work for the Namibia Nature Foundation as an environment and social safeguard specialist. And today I will be talking to you about driving sustainable development at the climate-biodiversity nexus from a Namibia Nature Foundation perspective. So this is just a little bit of an overview of what I'll be discussing. So I'll give you a little bit of a brief background on the Namibia Nature Foundation, the work that we do, as well as our programmatic areas and the different areas under which we work. Founded in 1987, we are a non-governmental organization in Namibia promoting sustainable development and the conservation of biological diversity for the benefit of all Namibians, that is both for the present and the future generation. We are approximately 80 staff members, plus minus 80 staff members, and of which 80% of those are female and 80% of those are youth. We basically work through all those areas in Namibia, and we have about 4 thematic areas under which we work, mainly social ecosystems, productive land and seascapes, natural ecosystems and biodiversity, as well as global environmental issues. We have about 7 programmatic areas that really centers our work, and that is namely sustainable forestry, sustainable agriculture, freshwater ecosystems and fisheries, marine ecosystems, combating wildlife crime, community-based natural resource management, climate change, as well as technical services and policy. So I will be going into the detail of each of these programmatic areas. But under community-based natural resource management, or CBO, community-based organization strengthening, we really focus on governance support to strengthen community structures, providing technical support to improve livelihoods and enhance resilience of our local communities. Under combating wildlife crime, we really work with the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism in supporting their efforts to combat wildlife crime and ensuring that iconic wildlife species and tourism are revived, which is an important livelihood strategy for most of our local and rural communities. And then under marine conservation, we really strive to improve commercial fishing practices. We strive to advance our knowledge of Namibia's marine resources and their value to our local communities and coastal communities, and we also strive to improve ocean governance and conservation in our marine environment. Under sustainable agriculture, we support the formalization and the growth of access to the organic market sector of our local communities. And we also support local communities in improving their resilience and promoting appropriate value chains when it comes to agriculture. We also work in the freshwater and inland fisheries, where we support community and ecosystem-based fisheries resources to recover fish stocks for ecosystems resilience, as well as food security and improving nutrition within our local communities in the Kavango and Zambezi areas, to ensure that they are really reflected in our national and international decision making and policy making. And then we also support in contributing or support local communities in contributing to the mobilization of resources and developing really inclusive and integrated resource mobilization practices or mechanisms. Now I'll go into the detail of each of our programmatic areas, starting off with strengthening community conservation to leverage protected areas. This is really our programmatic areas on supporting the community-based organizations within Namibia. Now historically, I think we all know that Namibia is the driest country south of the Sub-Sahara. with highly variable rainfall. However, we are endowed with abundance of natural resources that are potentially an important source of income and livelihood diversification for most of our local communities and rural communities. So before independence, there was quite a number of discriminatory legislation between freehold and communal farmers. There was also a need for conservation outside parks and reserves because of the abundance of natural resources found outside parks as well. There was a need to empower our communities and give them full rights over their wildlife and natural resources, and really allow or give communities the rights to manage their own natural resources sustainably and derive benefits from their natural resources. And as a result of the negative impacts of climate change, land degradation, economic recession, we have seen a big rise in human-wildlife conflict, where humans get into conflict with wildlife, and we of course saw a need to also address human-wildlife conflict and enable coexistence of humans or our local communities with wildlife. And we also saw a need to drive the sustainable development agenda from a local perspective, and ultimately promoting youth and gender inclusivity in adaptation and mitigation measures from a locally led adaptation perspective. So as one of the very few countries in the world where conservation and environmental management is enshrined within our constitution, Namibia's approach to conservation is quite holistic and inclusive, both in terms of maintaining ecological biodiversity and integrity, as well as protecting the rights of our local communities. We also made sure that the information about the call was made accessible through various channels, through various languages, and we allowed for communities to basically be able to submit these proposals in different ways where they felt comfortable. For instance, short videos, short voice notes, writing up a small essay, or for those who could, they actually wrote a proposal. Now, we received over 100 applications, of which 20 were successfully selected to attend a workshop where they were further supported in ways on how to develop proposals. So we only had funding for about 10 participants for seed funding. So after the workshop, we had a competition where 10 participants basically were awarded with seed funding, but the other 10, of course, also went back home with a fully developed proposal. So I think this is a really good success story for us in terms of showing what accessible financing looks like from a local perspective. But of course, there are quite a number of things that we still need to look at in terms of improving, accessing financing from a local perspective. Our next programmatic area is sustainable agriculture. So we use various agroecological approaches through strengthening farmer support and capacity development. We also support value chain development. We support monitoring and evaluation, research and adaptive management, and we also support cross-cutting integration and policy support. And this ultimately helps us sustain our natural systems, improve farmers' livelihoods, and also improve social systems. Now, some of the activities that we have been doing under this programmatic area is that we have capacitated farmers to grow food themselves, as well as for the market, using agroecological practices as well as regenerative practices. We have also supported a lot of farmers in improving rangeland and livestock management in the conservation context. We have also then built on collaboration and exchange to create synergies between stakeholders and influence policy level decision making. And lastly, we have also supported functional agricultural value chains, such as by means of securing livelihoods of local communities. So over the past year, we have supported approximately 800 farmers in 9 conservancies in the Zambezi region, as well as in the Bobota National Park, through trainings and mentoring. And as a result of our training and mentoring, there has been a general increase of over 38% in crop yields, showcasing the effectiveness of our interventions. And besides crop yields, or improving crop yields, we've also worked on enhancing household dietary diversity scores by providing the local communities with trainings on how to improve their nutrition. So, as the NNF, we are also promoting the sustainable management of productive landscapes and seascapes. We are working in the Kavango and the Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area, which is basically a treaty between 5 partner countries, which is Namibia, Angola, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, for the purpose of promoting a world-class tourism destination through the conservation of wildlife, which ultimately benefits the local community, and whereby they're able to actively manage their natural resources. So one of the key features of the resources in the Kavango and the Zambezi region is that they are transboundary in nature, and that they share fisheries resources with the neighboring countries, which gave rise to our work in this landscape. So in terms of really understanding the system dynamics of fisheries in the region, is that in the past decade or so, there has been a rise in the fish stocks as a result of the rise in the ephemeral rivers. Communities started exporting, overfishing, and using effective but destructive gear. Shortly after, there was a serious decline in the fish stocks in the river as a result of various driving forces, such as lack of data, lack of coordination, lack of law enforcement, the expansion of agricultural and horticultural land use practices, climate change, and human population growth. We've also seen other pressures, such as human pressures that affected the river resources, such as the overexploitation of the natural resources in the area, and also some ecosystem changes in terms of poor quality of water, as well as the quantity. And this, of course, resulted in the decline of the fish stocks. And people ultimately became, or they were unable to afford fish. And what was once known to be a staple food in the region somehow became non-existent. So this has then resulted in us dealing with the urgency of the inland fisheries issues. And of course, there has been some transboundary responses in the shared resource in terms of shared governance, restoration initiatives of the riverine ecosystems, co-management structures, transboundary communication, improved law enforcement, and so forth. So over the last 2 decades, we have, as the NNF, have worked very closely with the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources in Namibia in the 2 regions in order to engage communities on the ground to take ownership and responsibility of the management of the fisheries resources. So communities are ultimately encouraged to identify areas that they feel would be beneficial to recover fish stocks, and then they will put out rules and regulations for utilization. And then they, of course, establish a governing body which is recognized by the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources, and they are, of course, then gazetted as fisheries reserves. Now this has, of course, seen quite a lot of benefits for the communities in terms of improved education. There's also a lot of citizen research now being conducted by the local communities. And for the NNF, we have reported at least 2 success stories where we supported 2 conservancies in the Zambezi region, to recover fish stocks, and these have now become hotspots for recreational angling, and it attracts a lot of tourists every year. Centered around policy and practice, practice harmonization in terms of banning of those destructive nets, encouraging closed seasons, harmonizing bylaws. We also support restoration of the riverine ecosystem by removing threats and establishing these fisheries reserves. And then we also support communities in establishing their own fisheries guards, fish guards, that actually also support the Ministry of Fisheries in law enforcement. There has been quite a lot of activities going around in the inland fisheries programmatic area, and we have seen very good results here with. Our next programmatic area is combating wildlife crime. So we basically support the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism with their efforts in combating wildlife crime in terms of dehorning, surveillance, communication, as well as some rhino ranger program, coordination through awareness events, trainings, and technical support, as well as enterprise development. And then we also support various partnerships through this programmatic area. The impact has really been of this work that at Independence we basically had over 400 black rhinos, and today Namibia boasts over 2,000 black rhinos within the country, which is the biggest single black rhino population in the world. This is also just some statistics in terms of the efforts that we have been supporting the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism with. So between 2020 and 2017, about 39 rhinos have been poached, and this has of course declined significantly, where we only saw 4 rhinos being poached between 2018 and 2023, and this is of course as a result of our rhino ranger patrolling efforts, which significantly went up, and we also had we supported quite a few rhino awareness raising activities, as well as through our dehorning and law enforcement activities. Now, our next programmatic area is the marine conservation programmatic area. So as we all know, or as most of us know, the Benguela current system off the coast of Namibia is one of the only 4 major upwelling systems in the world. The Benguela current is bounded by 2 warm currents, which is basically the Angola current in the north and the Alguaz current in the south. So despite our Benguela current system being the world's most productive and biodiverse marine region, the Namibia coastal and marine environment receives quite little attention from conservation NGOs, and this is of course what gave rise to the work that we do, because there's been a lot of threats to the marine conservation sector, especially when it comes to major issues like the decline of the sardine fisheries, which was once a cornerstone species for most of our work. And then there's also been a lack of management of this resource in terms of our currently unregulated marine protected area, which is the MPA, as well as other anthropogenic factors. So the NNF is therefore involved extensively in increasing the number of projects aimed at addressing some of these conservation needs and also improving the livelihoods of the coastal communities. So the key impact so far has been that we have seen a 98% reduction in seabird bycatch in the Namibian demersal hake longline fishing industry. We have also supported the facilitation of the amendment of the Namibia Island Marine Protected Area regulations, while offering support and engaging the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources to basically redraft and validate and implement the NIMPA Plus or the NPA regulations. So we have extensively supported the establishment of a new civil society organization. This is called NAMCOP. So this NGO is basically going to be responsible to rehabilitate seabirds off the shore of Lüderitz along various islands there. And then we have also provided support to the National Blue Economy Policy and Central Marine Special Planning. So far we have trained over 100 fishing industry personnel on ecosystem-based approaches to fisheries, and we have also supported the increased levels of ocean literacy amongst various coastal schools, as well as the Namibian public in general. So our next programmatic area is technical services and policy. We basically leverage in-house expertise and partnerships to provide consultancy and technical services that reflect local realities and fill knowledge gaps around the environment and socio-economic issues, and promote innovation, social and ecological resilience and well-being. We do this through technical reports, scoping and feasibility studies. We do this through environmental economics, as well as developing management plans, and also guidelines and capacity building. So our policy work is really twofold, and it includes supporting policy and strategy processes as consultants, and it also includes the integration of local perceptions and the needs and systematic collection of data, knowledge and lessons learned, as well as best practices throughout the NMF's programmatic areas to basically contribute to national and international policy and regulation, as well as decision-making processes.